Hi, my name is Kieran Kern and this is my MBA HRM assignment. I'm here to talk to you about human resources management in the global pandemic. I don't need to talk too much about the global pandemic. I think we've all been impacted. It's a 1 in 100 year event and let's hope it stays that way. So first of all, I'm going to go through the numbers. As of today, globally there's nearly 90 million cases. There's an incredible 1.9 million dead. Here in Ireland, we have 136,000 people. That's increased exponentially over the Christmas period, as everyone will know. And we have 2,327 dead. Terrible figures, really. So let's get into the HRM side of it. So an EU survey found that Ireland has the second highest level of people working from home from those surveyed. Belgium had the highest with 52%. Ireland is joint with Italy for second place. Then we have Spain, followed by France. So it looks like Ireland has embraced the whole working from home thing, but there wasn't much choice for a lot of people. Obviously, safety concerns took precedent. So now let's talk about some of the challenges of working from home, which those of you who are working from home will understand quite well. Face-to-face management, this has been a big thing. Everybody is used to face-to-face interactions with their manager. It helps learn, it helps develop, it helps everything. Working from home is a big challenge. This is especially a challenge for new hires. I haven't experienced this myself, but I can imagine for somebody new to a position, trying to get up and running from a working from home environment where you're only interacting over phones, etc., must be very, very difficult. I suppose that leads on to what's the next challenge: access to information. Remote workers can express concerns about getting access to information from their colleagues, information generally. This is clearly a very big challenge. Then we have the whole isolation thing. Loneliness is, myself personally, is one of the biggest things that I've heard from my colleagues and people that I know. Obviously going from a working environment where you're dealing with people face to face every day to a situation where maybe you're working at home on your own, or you're working at home with not many people around, just basically a shock to the system in terms of a new way of doing things. Obviously then that leads into the home distractions. So for many people, balancing the work from home responsibilities with their general life can be very tough. This gets increasingly difficult when we're talking about childcare and all that's involved. This is a huge challenge. It's a challenge right now. It has been a challenge up to this point, and it's going to be a challenge into the future. Then we have the cost. There's obviously an increased cost on people. So people potentially trying to convert space into office rooms, the cost that's involved, increased cost of utilities, all that sort of stuff. This really plays into it. Then there's a lack of clarity. People just really don't know where this is going to end. Where do we see ourselves? Will we be working at home still in August? Will we be back to the office anytime soon? Nobody knows. The government are really struggling. It's probably the worst time in history to be in government. You can't do anything right, and that looks like it's going to be the way to continue. So what can HRM do to help this? Well, they can encourage and provide several different forms of communication. Email is really not enough. I think anyone working from home will understand that. Remote workers benefit from stuff like technology. Obviously, when I talk about that, I'm talking about Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype. When you're on a conference call and you can't see the people, it's very difficult. People interrupt each other. They don't know what's going on. People really benefit from visual cues. So management can establish rules. Remote working can be much more efficient and enjoyable when managers set expectations, i.e., look, we're going to have, this is the frequency, means and timing of the communication. We're going to talk at this time and that time. That just gives people an idea of, they don't need to sit at their computer at certain times. They just need to know when they need to be available. So remote social interaction. I think it's important to encourage employees to take some time, have a virtual coffee, ring one of your friends, take 15 minutes out to discuss topics that aren't work-related. It just bestows a bit of normality on the situation, and I suppose gets you away from the whole, again, when we're talking about isolation. Then encouragement and emotional support. This is important for managers to acknowledge. People are going through huge amounts of stress and anxiety like probably no time in their life. When I talk about that, I mean holistically in terms of the company. Like, people are going through a lot at the moment. Work-life balance programs, employee assistance, wellness, all these things can really help. So how has the HRM function been impacted? Well, managing the initial shock. This, to all intents and purposes, happened overnight. There were no policies in place. HRM were really forced to support staff in some cases experience that they never had. Retaining employees. I know personally critical staff who were forced to leave. They just either chose to leave because they couldn't handle the working situation, or personal situations left it impossible for them to work. Obviously, remote online management, remote working at this level, I suppose has never been experienced before globally anywhere. So trying to deal with that, it has been a monumental challenge. I suppose lack of knowledge in technologies. A lot of staff are getting used to technologies that they have never used, and that in itself creates huge issues. I'm sure we've all been on calls where people are dropping off, people don't know how to set up videos, they don't know how to mute calls, everything like that. I mean, we've all been involved in it. Then obviously it's crisis management. The HRM function were put in a position, as I said, that they've never been put in before. Policies not in place, trying to deal with payroll stuff, just everything. It's just been a shock to the system across the board. Then trying to get new safety regulations put in place. So rapid changes in work conditions. So I work for a pillar bank, and we're in a position where some people have to be in the office. So customer facing staff. So how do they do this? How do they create very quickly a workspace that's safe for employees who need to be physically present at work, but also need to be socially distant and stay safe? So we're talking about this, and as I said, the HRM function has been impacted, but so has everybody. So where do we see this going, and what do we see the future of this being? Well, it's probably going to end up in a situation where we have hybrid working conditions, i.e. where people work 2 days from home, 3 days from home, 1 day from home. But I don't think it's ever going to get back to the situation where people will be in the office, certainly not over the next couple of years. The way I see it is that the HRM function will probably be in a position where they have to allocate percentages to teams, i.e. 10 on a team, you can have 40% of your staff in. So you can arrange with your colleagues that I'm in all the time and I'm not in all the time. But I think managers are going to be put in that position where they really need to focus on this going forward. New policies. I think companies are going to have to introduce more robust working from home policies just to support staff. And I have in here the way we work principles. What I mean by that is, because people are working from home, and I think there's a tendency to get stuck to your PC. I know in the early days I was logging on very early and logging off very late. I'm sort of afraid to move away from my computer because you're worried that people people in the office or your management are thinking that you're not doing anything. So I think people need to be encouraged to, work differently. Log on early, finish early, take a 2-hour lunch break, log on, go out for a run, do these things. But these really need to be set in stone. You can't just have employees wondering if this is the way that they should do things. The HRM function really need to get their hands around this and create policies where people feel comfortable in the way that they work. Obviously then we have stuff like payroll changes, the cost that I mentioned earlier on, there's going to have to be payroll changes, I believe, where there's going to be allowances or subsidies which is taken from your salary, as opposed to sending off people to try and claim the stuff back themselves. I don't think that's fair. Then, as I mentioned earlier, we have wellness and support. So companies obviously nowadays put a big emphasis on wellness and support, but I believe this is going to be even more important into the future because of the situations that people are going to find themselves in. And then virtual communications. I really do believe that the leaps and bounds that we will see in this in the future are going to be huge. I know myself that we started off using Skype. It's in my personal opinion, it's not great. We're moving on to Microsoft Teams. I know that a lot of companies have really ramped up in terms of the spend and the speed in which they're introducing really robust virtual communications. So on that, I will take any questions.
So what has your experience been working from home, and did you have a choice?
So as I said, I work for one of the pillar banks in Ireland, and the answer is no, I didn't have a choice. In fact, my situation was quite unique. I walked out of the building that I was in, and I will never walk back into it again. It was closing. It was due to close, but I left on March the 12th, and as I said, I will never be back into it. I'm a business analyst, so I can do my job from home. Obviously, being working in a bank, we have branch staff and customer facing staff, and a lot of those people need to be in work, so I really didn't have a choice. So I suppose from myself personally, I've benefited in some ways because I'm able to work longer hours and have more free time. I don't have a commute, my personal situation means that I have the space and ability to work from home. That's not the same for all my colleagues. I know a lot of my colleagues are really struggling and would much rather be in the office, but they simply didn't have a choice in the matter. And the reason being is the things I said before.
So how has your HRM department helped you?
Okay, so at the start, I think the HRM department really struggled. I think they struggled really with comms. I think comms was a big thing. We were getting bombarded with emails about this, that and the other. It was very, very difficult to decipher, and it was just overkill. Now I understand that was the reason, but I think as time went on, we started to have, the emails were less frequent, we started to have more calls. They took our advice on board, and now I find that they've really sharpened up the message. I think everybody knows where they are. We're kept really clued in. I think that the bank has done all the things I've mentioned here. Employee assistance has been excellent. They are working on policies. They are working on the way we work principles. I think the payroll thing is going to be coming down the track. They've told us that where there's questions that we want answered that they can't answer, or things that we need to know, they've been very upfront and open about that. They're telling us that, look, we know that these need to be answered. We can't answer them right now. We're working on these policies. You guys will be the first to know when we have answers. And I think that's really, really important. I think it's certainly in the situation there's enough ambiguity without. I don't mind being told that I don't know the answer, but we're working on it and we will tell you. And I have to be honest, my experience with my colleagues is they all feel the very same. The message, as I said, has sharpened up from the start, because it really was a challenge at the beginning.
Okay. Do you see working from home being continued into the future, even after the pandemic?
Yes, I think there is many reasons for this. I think a lot of industries in this type of economic environment will look at cost. Commercial real estate in a lot of the big cities where places operate, like for instance the bank that I work in, are going to scale back. They're going to look at their model. I think unfortunately it took a global pandemic for companies to trust their employees to work from home. If you look at any of the surveys or any of the, if you even look at what the big companies around the world are saying, productivity hasn't suffered and in some places has increased. I look at the likes of Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they look like they're going to let their staff work from home indefinitely. I think the banks will take a view that they will only ever have a certain amount of people in the office, be it 40 or 50%. And as I said, they're going to have to figure out how they do that. But yeah, I most certainly see working from home a thing of the future. And as I said, if I focus on my own personal position, now as I said, for some of my colleagues this doesn't work. But for myself, I find that I've been able to work longer hours. I find I'm more efficient. I don't miss the commute. So for me, I have more free time while working longer hours and being more effective. And I really have found that my management and our HR department have really embraced that. We've been sent out surveys, we've been asked what we think as opposed to being told, and all this has been taken on board. So I really do believe the way we work has been changed forever.